he comes to this part on her chart. He said, so she's diagnosed with, and I've got my phone because I had to look it up. She's diagnosed with Sagawa syndrome. Look at, just like on your dress, there's candy on the wall. Candy, candy. Where's your candy dress? I see candy on your dress. It's perfect. Today is just going to be an all-around update of sorts, although it is really going to focus on Tessie. Tessie is our 2-year-old who is on the autism spectrum. And the reason it is a Tessie update is because Tessie had her very first ever gastroenterology appointment today that we've been waiting for ever since she was in the ER about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago now. I was amazed at how fast they got her into gastro, because the last time one of our kids needed to go there, which was like last fall, they said that there was a 6-month wait, but her doctor called and really pushed for her to get in, and they called and said that they had an appointment in like a week and a half. So I mean, I would have taken anything. Even if we had something, I would have been canceling things so that we could be there. Thankfully, we didn't even have to cancel anything other than I had to pull her out of school to go to the appointment. So we went to her appointment. We barely made it. There were 2 trains that we got stopped by after I got her out of school, but we finally made it. I think we were like a minute late, but it wasn't an issue. I got her in there, we weighed her. She had gained back the 3 pounds that she had lost when she was in the ER that day, because she has been eating like to make, basically she's been eating like she's trying to make up for the weight that she lost while she was sick. Then a resident came in and started going over her entire basically life history with us, and came in and said, so this is kind of complicated. Not just complicated, but weird. Because he basically started going through every single thing on her chart with me, which no one had ever done before. And her chart is apparently enormous, which, I mean, makes sense because she has a lot of specialists and she's had hospital stays and a ton of doctors. And so I was just basically confirming things, and he was summarizing things and making things more concise, making things make more sense, because they had her central apnea diagnosis worded really strangely. And then he comes to this part on her chart. He said, so she's diagnosed with, and I've got my phone because I had to look it up, she's diagnosed with Sagawa syndrome. And I was like, what? And he goes, Sagawa syndrome. And I said, what is that? And he said, I wasn't really sure. I had to look it up before I came in here, and I was researching it before I came in here because I've never heard of it before. And it is called dopamine responsive dystonia. And so that was on her chart as a diagnosis, and I've never been told that. And he asked me a bunch of questions. I have no idea when that diagnosis happened. I have no idea if that diagnosis is real. I think that it was probably a diagnosis that wasn't ever investigated, maybe, like it was a suspected thing, but it was written down as a diagnosis. I'm going to talk to her neurologist about it. I know that he would have told me if he gave her that diagnosis, and I've never seen it in the neurology list of diagnoses. I think it was probably something that happened in the hospital during her 2nd hospitalization, because I remember they were talking about weird possibilities. So I'm guessing that's where it came from. Mommy and Tessie? Say mama. Mama. Tessie. Tessie. You are talking to yourself. Look how cute you are. Kiss the baby. Oh, look at that smile. It was just a weird day. Basically, we went over everything that's ever happened with her. And I mentioned that I've had 3 doctors suggest that it's likely that I have Ehlers-Danlos hypermobile type. I can't talk right now. I have like a 7. There's only 2 things that I can't do on the, like, you can't really see it in the sweater, on the, what is it, Baton scale or whatever it's called. Basically, I have really hypermobile joints. My elbows super bend backwards, my knees super bend backwards, my fingers all super bend backwards. I can totally put my hands flat on the ground when I bend forward. And then a lot of the other things that are required for a diagnosis I also have. I have mitral valve prolapse. Basically, I think that I should be able to get a diagnosis, and Tessie is also hyperflexible. I know that Tessie is 1,000 times more flexible than me. She frequently just drops into the splits. Her joints are so hypermobile that it's insane. I mean, she makes me feel like not even a tiny bit hypermobile in comparison to her. And so I mentioned that because I know that sometimes having Ehlers-Danlos hypermobility can cause gastroenterology to treat you differently. So I mentioned that and said it's something that my doctors referred me to genetics, and I haven't gotten into genetics yet, but I'm planning on talking to them about it at Tessie's appointment for her on the 28th. And he was like, okay, good. That's really, really good, because that'll entirely change the way that we look at her here. So it is a really important piece of the puzzle. And I mean, I just want to know too, especially with 2 kids that have gastro problems, and they're both super hypermobile kids. It's kind of an important piece of the puzzle that we want to know whether or not that is something that plays a part of it. And just also kind of out of curiosity, because a lot of people who have Ehlers-Danlos seem to have links to the autism community also. So that does make me a little bit curious. So anyways, the doctor that we'd seen at the hospital, he came in, and they are right now really focusing on allergies, just because obviously there's a strong link between dairy and Tessie getting sick. Although he's just sort of checking out everything. He ordered enough tests that they gave me 3 little containers that I have to fill and take back to the lab. She has a ton more blood work that they did. They're testing her for celiacs. They're testing her for all sorts of different allergies. The one thing that I would say probably was the most concerning to me, he said we needed to find another type of milk that she can drink. And that reminded me of the thing that I hadn't told them, which was that we've tried rice milk, we've tried almond milk, we've tried cashew milk, we've tried soy milk, we've tried every single milk that they have at Meijer, every milk alternate that they have at Meijer. And every single one makes her sick within 5 minutes of drinking it. Immediately sick. And so that's why she only drinks water, and sometimes we'll do like 90% water and like 10% apple juice, because she can't drink apple juice all the time. She would drink so much juice. So she basically drinks water, and that's it. He suggested Ripple, or I think the other one was Katie, milk made with peas, that we can find. I guess he said usually Target is where we need to look for it, and he wants us to try that because he thinks that's the best chance of something she'll be able to drink. However, he said he wasn't surprised that all those milks made her sick. So I was sitting there afterwards, there was so much we were talking about, so much back and forth, that at the time I didn't say like, why does that not surprise you? Do you think she's allergic to all those things? Oh my gosh, please no. Please no, don't let this be Sadie part 2, where Sadie was allergic to, she was allergic to green peas, peanuts, soy, wheat, dairy, was that it? It was like everything. That's like in everything. That's like all the food. I know it's not literally all the food, but it felt like all the food. That's where we are, just waiting for tests. We go back in a month. We already got her blood drawn. We went to the lab. That was as awful as it can be when you're getting a toddler who doesn't understand what's going on, to have their blood drawn. So that is done. At least it's over with. I know we're waiting for her to go to the bathroom so I can get those samples and take those back to the lab too, and just have all of the tests be started and processing so that they can have the answers that they want to see why there was blood in that last test that we sent in. So that is the update with Tessie. I guess it's not really an update because we don't have any answers, other than they really seem to be looking at allergies at the moment. Oh, and she's not supposed to have dairy. We're removing dairy, which I guess I knew was going to be the first thing to happen, so she cannot have dairy at the moment. In other news, we got a phone call from neurology for Margaret last night, Maggie Rose, and they called, and I'd been waiting for them to call. I knew they were going to call and tell me that she had abnormal test results, because every time she has a blood draw, they're abnormal. And usually it's like the same thing every time is abnormal. Her vitamin D levels are extremely low no matter what we had tried, although we'd gotten them up a little bit. They were no longer like 7. The first time they did them, they were 7. We'd gotten them up to like higher than that, teens, low 20s. So last night they called, and I was just waiting to hear him say like, her vitamin D levels are low, and this other thing that has to do with, like, it's something that's indicative of malnutrition and rickets and not having enough poultry in your diet and stuff like that. It has to do, I think, with the vitamin D. Anyways, those 2 test kits actually came back finally normal, and I think that's because she's finally eating a little bit more, because of the medication that she's on has her eating more, which has me so excited. So I didn't have time to be happy about that, because I picked up the phone and I was like, "You have test results for me?" And she's like, "Yes." And I was like, "But they're abnormal." And she goes, "Yes, they are a couple abnormal tests that the doctor is concerned about." And I was like, "Vitamin D?" And she's like, no. This time it was that her glucose was high and that her platelets were high. I may have a freaked out call into her doctor right now, waiting for her doctor to call me back. Because the nurse was like, "He's concerned about it. We're going to be retesting." And then I did the thing that I shouldn't have done, and I Googled what does high platelets mean, and it's like the scariest things in the world. I was talking about glucose the whole time. I was like asking questions about the glucose reading, because that was what I was really focused on. And then we get to the end of the conversation and the nurse is like, "Well, we're really concerned about her platelet levels." And it was kind of like, oh, okay, thanks, bye. And then of course I have 1,000 questions, which was when I Googled, and that was just an enormous mistake, as it always is an enormous mistake to try to get any sort of medical answers from Google, which was why I called this morning and spoke with the nurse and was like, "Can you have her doctor call me?" Her doctor is amazing and does call parents frequently and is wonderful. Just to tell me that it's okay and that she's not worried about this, because I would feel a lot better if I heard from her primary care. Not that I don't love her neurologist, I do. I love her neurologist. He's a great doctor. But I will feel better if I hear from her primary care that she's cool with waiting a few months to retest rather than just retesting sooner. So that is what is going on right now, because I scared myself with Google. Don't Google. I know better. I have no self-control. Although you can bet I was Googling what on earth is Sagawa syndrome after he said that Tessie'd been diagnosed with it. Does she fall down frequently? Well, I mean, all of our girls have apraxia, so yes, she falls down frequently. Anyways, that is the update. That is what's new here. I want to curl up in a ball and nap for like 2 years, because the last 24 hours have been emotionally exhausting. You are so silly. Dada? Did you get to see Dada? You have a spoon? Boo. Pika. Boo. Look at all that talking. Pika. Boo.
Go.
Go. Go. Ready, set. Look, you are so silly. You are silly today, aren't you? Are you silly? Hopefully we'll get some answers. If it's just like she can't have dairy anymore, that's not the end of the world. I really love dairy. I really love cheese, but I can do without putting cheese in everything. It probably is healthier for everybody that way. Anyways, that is it for today. If you like this video, we would love it if you would hit the like button. And if you're interested in all things autism, we'd love it if you'd hit subscribe. And I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.